regardless of the conclusion, it's the difference between you're right and that's right.
Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories.
So here's my story. One day, a long, long time ago, my best friend from high school on went out with me to a bar, and we were just sitting down and we were talking about all manner of things. But what he really wanted to talk to me about was his longtime girlfriend. And this was a woman to whom I had introduced him. We were in the same law school class, and I had introduced him, and they started going out. And I knew that he had already bought a ring.
Mm.
And so he was going to propose to her, but he wanted to ask me as his best friend what I thought.
Oh, no. And you know what? I'm laughing because all the way, it wouldn't be a good story that you'd be sharing right now if this wasn't about to take a turn.
Right.
And I can think of several turns
it might turn. It's not a turn that would shock the audience.
No, but I have a sneaking suspicion you did not follow the script that he was hoping would come out of your mouth.
I did not. I told him the truth. I told him that I didn't think it was a good match. And I followed up his inevitable question of, why do you say that? By telling him that I thought she was cold.
Oh.
That I didn't think she was necessarily a person whose first impulse was to be kind.
Oh, wow. Oh.
And I just
cold is one thing, but that's a laser for your first. Okay.
I thought that he was.
Side note, please don't ever describe me to someone.
So the subtext really, I don't know whether I put this in these words, but I thought he deserved better. And I thought that he was just infatuated with her because she was this beautiful woman, but I thought that he could do better.
Okay.
So they got engaged.
Oh no.
And they've been married for, I don't know, 30 years. They have two beautiful children, and it was years before he actually
did you go to the wedding?
Started. Yes, I did. But it was years before he actually started talking to me on the same regular basis. I have the sneaking suspicion that she knows about that conversation. But
awkward.
Be that as it may, the reason that I bring this up is because it made me think of so many times that I've personally or in business where I've had to make that assessment of, do I comply when somebody says, tell me the truth, ... And sometimes it's about business performance, and not in an evaluation sort of way. And not that I'm going to do anything. Well, I'm going to have to let you go. Not one of those go, no-go decisions, but just tell me the truth. Do you think I can do this? Do you think I should do this? Am I talented at this? Did I do a good job? And there's so many times, I think, particularly in business, whether it's as a coworker or as a leader, you have to make that assessment on whether you do tell the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, a couple of things that may or may not tie back to where we want to take the episode, but do you stand by your initial, do you feel like you were correct? Is that how she has seemed to be in life, or was your judgment off, do you think?
No, I think my judgment was off.
Interesting.
Because, well, first of all, it's been a very successful match.
Right.
And so he obviously picked the right person for him. And so my judgment was off in that.
Well, I love that answer even more, though, for this particular question, because you don't get to know whether your judgment is off when someone is asking you to be honest about an assessment of something. I mean, if you did, then it would be a lot easier to be like, I know for certain that I am correct, and therefore I will stand bravely on this rock of honesty. But you don't know, and you still have to make the choice about whether to share what you think you see.
Well, so that's the question. Was my judgment off in telling him the truth as I saw it? Or should I have realized, and I don't say thought, but I mean realized, that I couldn't know her as well as he did at that point. I certainly couldn't know whether she was right for him, from an outsider's perspective, no matter how well I knew him. And I'm not sure, even as his best friend, I had any place answering that question.
Well, that adds a completely different layer that I actually didn't think to ask about, but is also important in this and maybe it's not defining honesty, but discerning the Venn diagram of honesty and certainty. Because what you could have said was what you just said. Like, look, I don't know her extremely well. I haven't spent a ton of time with her. Here are a couple of mauve flags I've seen that make me a little bit concerned, but I'm probably not the best judge because we haven't spent tons of time together as a couple. But this concerns me a tiny bit.
No, and he would have immediately, that would have done better, because he would have immediately discounted my opinion just for my having used the word mauve.
Fair point. But the certainty, I think when you especially because I think there are some people for whom when they say a thing, it sounds like a fact, even if they're just sharing their perception or opinion. And if you are someone whose words people tend to take with, like, as if there's a huge difference between she is cold, she is this way, versus I get this spidey sense tingle of a vibe that this is the case. There's a big gap between those two things. And so gauging your own, I wouldn't even call it your own certainty, but your own validity. I can't think of the right word. Like, it's the volume to which you think that thing is a fact versus a lightly held experiential perception. But that's different from then. And then there's a second question of whether you share it or not.
Well, I think that what I should have, taking from what you said, I do think one of the ways that I failed in that conversation was I didn't account for the impact of what I was going to say. So he was asking me at what had to be what I presume to be a vulnerable moment for him, and I could have dialed it back.
Well, I have yet another layer of curiosity here. I mean, this is a man, as I believe the story went, who had already purchased a ring.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
So I am slightly not suspicious of, but my interest is piqued that he would even ask you that question at a post-ring buying moment, unless it was just sort of general nerves and fear. I mean, I guess that's a possibility, but that speaks to me of some layer of doubt or concern. There's something in him wasn't so rock solid that he was actually checking with friends. Now, again, that could just be jitters of just, please validate that I am on the right path. Which people, I mean, I certainly do plenty of those calls. I'm sure you do too. Like, people are pretty sure, but it's just scary. So that they want some like solidity behind them. So I get that, but it is a curiosity that I'm left with.
No, and I think that, and maybe it was validity, but the thing is that I think that you're right. As experts, as consultants, et cetera, as anybody giving advice, a lot of times, and this was another thing that I didn't do, I didn't allow for the possibility he was looking for validity, or maybe my best role at that time in his life was to give him that validity. And so I think that I guess where I was going is that the response to tell me the truth is a nuanced one. It's not even just that binary choice between I'm going to give you the unvarnished truth, I'm going to keep it real, or I'm going to lie to you.
Right. Well, because I think the question is, tell me the truth as you perceive it. I mean, that's the thing that feels a little bit different. I mean, because let's say the story played out completely differently. You didn't say that. They got married. He lived, 12 years of his life feeling lonely and unloved because his needs weren't being met and he's miserable. And then he finds out that you had that feeling, God forbid he finds out that in that moment you wanted to say, I saw this coming, and you didn't say it. That to me is a violation of the most core, like for me personally, I would rather risk the possibility that there will be upset rather than get to a point where somebody looks back in time and says, you kept that from me? Like, what? Like that is scarier to me, or it feels like a checkbox of bad friend.
Okay, but maybe if I could rewind and go back and have that conversation again, maybe the question I would be able to ask him is, let me just ask you this. What if I said in no uncertain terms that you ought to run fast and run scared and never and lose her number? Would that influence anything you're about to do? And if he says, no, I bought the ring.
Right.
I was just curious what you thought.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, okay, then the decision is easy because I'm not going to risk the relationship, and I don't have to worry about the scenario you just posited, which is, geez, if I had only known you felt that way, my life would have turned out differently.
Or like I was asking you because I too was having some doubts and I just wasn't sure. Or no, I also love that because it's clarifying what help the person is actually looking for, and it's saying, it's also about what I thought you were going to say was, if I went back in time, I could have even said, like, why, what about my opinion matters? Is this, it kind of comes back to something we've hit on before, just about being curious. Like, why are you asking? Like, what is it that you're concerned about? I mean, it reminds me a tiny bit of the sort of classic joke of, does my butt look fat in these jeans conversation between spouses. And I actually, something I very much respect about my husband is if I have a dress on or pants on, whatever, and I'm like, what do you think about this? I very much appreciate that he will be very honest in that, because, and it doesn't mean that my butt is big. Like that's not a good cut for you, or like that hangs in a way that doesn't flatter your body type or whatever. Like he's discerning enough, and he will share that, because here's the thing. If something doesn't look good, like I don't want to go out looking ridiculous. Not everything looks great on everybody. And so I value that honesty. There's a kind of honesty that has to be there for trust, but also there's a place to like validate the question to make sure that it matters. Like, are you asking because you're worried that they don't look great? Or are you looking just to kind of, I don't know, whatever. I can't quite map over the metaphor of understanding what matters about the question or why they're asking.
Yeah, I think I think that's really the crux of it. The way I approached the conversation was that it was structured as question answer, his question, my answer. When really, had I thought about it, or certainly from the wisdom of 30 years in the future, had I thought about it, I would have asked more questions.
Right.
What is it that concerns you? Why are you asking me this? I thought you two were really happy. You
bought a ring. Like, why now? Yeah.
You bought a ring, so I could have done so in a way that brought him to whatever conclusion that he wanted to reach. And we've talked about this before, but I think it's really important. Regardless of the conclusion, it's the difference between you're right and that's right.
For sure.
I wouldn't want him to have said, yeah, you're right, she's cold, I shouldn't be with her, because that's not the way to make any kind of decision that matters. He would have had to get to, that's right, I shouldn't be with her, if that's the way he was going.
Yes. Right. And actually, the clarity that I had when you said that just sort of clicked into place, because all of that assumes that's even really the question that he's asking you. And you don't even know, like maybe it is just general wedding nerves. And the reality is he's not questioning whether she's the one at all. Just this is a big scary thing, and you could have a whole conversation about that. I mean, I like the kind of decision flow here, and I almost feel like we could have a whole other episode about the like purely the honesty question. But I think the honesty question is the wrong first question. That the first question should be other questions.
Well, but if the honesty question is the one that's laid on the table, if that's what's asked, I think then that what I'm taking from the conversation, which I wish we had had 30 years ago, what I'm taking from the conversation is that even if the honesty question is what's laid on the table, it's not the question that has to be picked up. You can keep probing for what the right question should have been.
Yeah. Yes. So I have a funny story that I'm not going to delve into now about that. That is something that people find very annoying about me, by the way, that I always am like, well, wait, why are you asking that? Like, do you need like blah, blah? They're like, just answer my question. Like, just give me the thing I asked for. But it is that sort of diagnostic. Like, are you asking me the right question? Are we working on the right problem? Are we even focused in the right place? Like, then I can decide whether or not I share that thing with you, but it's not helpful. Like, that obviously wasn't what he was asking you because you gave him a very definitive answer, for better or for worse. And it didn't change his path. So that probably wasn't actually the question he was even asking you. It wasn't the itch he was trying to scratch, the thing he was trying to understand, because he got an answer, a navigational answer based on exactly what he asked you. And it didn't change his course. So it wasn't the right question, even though he posed it.
Worried about 1,000 other things. Maybe they had a difference in religion, or he was worried that she's taller than he is, or they didn't want to have kids at the same time, or
just that marriage is scary endeavor.
Marriage is scary.
Yeah.
So it could have been a lot of different things. And when I think about the tell me the truth questions I get in business, tell me the truth, is this the thing I should be doing? And I had a lawyer ask me who worked for me, tell me the truth. Do you think I'm cut out for this? And we had a much longer discussion, starting with my response of, why do you ask? What's really concerning you? What about it do you like? What about it don't you like? What have you seen other things, the things that you like? Have you seen them elsewhere where you think that it's a better fit? What does a fit look like to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
All of those things that come with experience.
Yeah.
And we wound up in that one scenario. She made a decision that practicing law wasn't right for her. And in fact, she became and has been for a number of years now working with a software company that supports lawyers. So she understands legal profession, and she's embedded in various law firms, but she's not
as a lawyer.
And she's really happy. That's what she feels she's meant to do. But I never said to her, and it never even occurred to me to say to her, you're not cut out to be a lawyer, when that's her chosen profession.
This is super important. I think when weighing honesty, you have to take responsibility for if you are, blocking a path that it's that you can't possibly know. You think of all these stories of, great writers whose 8th grade English teacher told them they were terrible writers, or that they'd never be anything, or whatever. And then they go on to do these other things. I think about this fork in the road a lot for 2 reasons. One, sometimes the reason they became such an amazing writer was because somebody told them that they couldn't, and that sparked a thing in them. So there's sometimes value in that, but not usually. Usually it just shuts down a thing, and someone's like, well, someone said I'm a bad writer, so I'm not even going to try that again. So that's a huge response. Like, the question of honesty doesn't even feel like the right question in that moment of like, you are telling somebody with a prophetic tone what is and is not possible for them. That's a huge responsibility. And there have been moments and one that should not be taken lightly. There have been moments in my business throughout the years where I've been working with somebody that I have a really, really strong feeling should not be running a business. They just, there's a couple of key things that you have, like it can look a lot of different ways. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but you have to have a certain amount of grit. You have to have a certain amount of sort of not dissatisfaction, but like a wanting to make everything better. You can't have a really super cozy relationship with the status quo if you're going to be an entrepreneur. You have to really be like, have a certain drive. And there's just a few things I feel like if they're not there, it doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's going to be hard and a slog. You're always going to be swimming upstream. And there's been a few times where as somebody's wanting me to help them, there's this tiny part of me. It's like, should I just save them years of struggle and like help them put a pillow over the head of this right now?
Help them put a pillow over the head of their ambition.
I am the Kevorkian of business consulting, but I don't. And if they asked me, I'm not sure exactly what I would say, because I wouldn't want to say like, I think you got this. I think I would try to find and I've said things like this before, like, look, I don't know, this is your life. Like, here's some things that I'm seeing. And if you could work on those things, like this would be easier because you just don't seem super drawn to this part. And so you either need to find somebody who can do that part for you, just laying out the truth, but never in a way that, this is the key thing, never in a way that makes them get the impression that I see something they can't in a prophetic way. And it's almost like you said, what was it, like, that's true, you're right versus that's right. It's, I don't want them to do anything because I'm right. And I don't want them to necessarily believe that what I see is that's right. It's just kind of, I feel an obligation to be honest in those moments, to not hide things that I see, but I'm very, very careful to not make it sound like that it's a crystal ball of some sort, right? Or the level of certainty.
And with that, another thing that could have been done is, had I said, what I'm seeing is that she seems kind of cold. Is that what you see? And he could say, absolutely not. No, right. We've done this. Well, then I'm clearly wrong. Right?
You just made like I had a boyfriend in high school who, when it was us, he was like the best thing ever. Like, he was so lovely and just such a great guy. Something about him, when anyone, like one other human in the room, he was kind of intolerable. And I got to say, I don't disagree. Like, he put on this sort of like persona, super just insecurity, I think, and he had this sort of like cocky arrogance that just like, and so I could totally see, like, there were several of my friends who were like, don't love that guy. Like, I'm not. And I was like, I get it. I see what you see. I do. But he is legitimately different when it's just the two of us. And who knows, maybe she's really shy. Like, maybe she's just not great at meeting other people. And to you, that feels cold, but she's actually just super introverted. And or maybe she doesn't like you, Elliot.
There were no introverts in the late 80s. And so that's it. And
so then she just didn't like you. That was
that is just so far afield. I mean, how could that even be possible?
That can't even be.
This is supposed to be
that
real,
is
honest.
Not right.
The story, that can't be right.
Can't possibly be the case. No, I think what I take away from this conversation is that when you feel like you were just handed a question and the only thing you're grappling with is, do I be honest or not? That's very possibly not the right first question.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories.
You
can find links to that group, as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email, and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village,
Yes, it does.
we'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of
Lovingly
ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us.
Including wrangling us.
Which is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.